Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Taking the Lead, our video podcast. And if you've been a fan and watched before, and I hope that's the case, you know this is our opportunity to interview senior executives, mostly from the world of PR, marketing, advertising, etc., who I respect and admire as leaders. Now, sometimes I get to interview friends who I've known a long time, and that is the case today. About to introduce you to Doug Simon, the CEO of DS Simon Media. He has been CEO for 38 years. Previously, in his youth, he was a talent associate to Bob Costas. So go Cuse, go Newhouse, go Syracuse. He is a frequent speaker at industry events. He's even testified before the US Senate as an expert witness on issues affecting the PR industry. But we're not going to be grilling him today, so no worries. And he is the host of the award winning PR Pros PR's Pop Pros Talk, on which I've appeared. So thank you, which is a video and a podcast. So, everyone, meet my longtime friend, Doug Simon. Welcome to Taking the
Great.
Lead.
Thank you so much, Ken, and thanks for your friendship and all that you contribute to PR. I shouldn't start off this way, but I will correct you because when I did start the business 38 years ago, my title wasn't CEO, but we don't have to go there on that. We can get rolling into
Founder,
more substance. Got to
founder.
be accurate. That's the
Okay.
important thing
No,
for
I
trust.
appreciate that. Okay. So let's dig right in. You believe that for many professionals, this is going to be fun. Work-life balance is a BS concept. So please explain that point of view. And what do you recommend professionals should strive for instead?
Sure. And thank you for asking that question. It came to mind and something I frequently mention, especially in job interviews. And, I'm not talking about someone who's struggling to feed their family, working three jobs to get by. But if you're in a professional job requiring a college degree, the problem I have with the thought of work life balance is it implies it's a zero sum game that you work more, your life is less. Your life is more, your work is less. So that's what I think is the BS concept, because what we want to strive for, and what I try and encourage the people on my team to strive for, is that your life makes your work better, your work makes your life better. Wouldn't that be amazing to go through in such a more positive approach to take?
I agree. I think some call that the work-life blend, where you take the best of both and you figure out what you want to do. I know some PR pros and others, if they have kids, they may do their work day. They come back and shut down for a few hours and go to the Little League game or make dinner or help with homework or whatever it is,
Yeah.
maybe some time with the spouse. Then they know they may go online like for an hour, like they limit it. They're very choiceful about it. And I agree somewhat. Time is our greatest asset. It's actually worth more than money because money's great, but time well spent gives us fulfillment, makes us better at what we do, and can help us make more money. So I agree.
Yeah, and you'll
Yeah.
probably chuckle about this, but when we started and the first time we ever did a company guidelines, we told people that personal phone calls were okay. Because I'm thinking, if you're meeting a friend after work, how are you going to know where to meet if you can't call them? Just don't be abusive. And guess what? There might be moments, and from me, they're a minimum, but sometimes clients need you at all hours and things happen that you have to respond to. So it's a trade off. It's not on off because your life doesn't go away when you're working.
Exactly. Exactly. So, like nearly all of our Taking the Lead guests, you are very honest. So, we're going to get more of that. You admitted that it took 14 years to fire someone, no names. But what did you learn from that? And what do you do differently now as a result of that experience?
Yeah, probably the number one lesson I learned was it probably should have taken only 13 and a half years
Okay, yeah.
to do that.
Wait, I think
Um,
we have some more studying to do.
right. But seriously, obviously, it's not whether I call it a strength or a weakness. Um, there's actually one thing that keeps me up in business, only one thing that keeps me up at night. And that's when I'm personally struggling to reach an employee, to make their performance happen and reach their capability. And I'm just not finding the clue to do that. I find that so painful. I know if I could take my emotion out of it, the reality is if I'm feeling that about an employee, they're probably not feeling that great about working here anyway. It might give them a new lease, but I really struggle that. So knowing that, our hiring process is extremely thorough. And one of the things that I do is I provide assignments that will replicate what they'll actually do on the job. And we've had some fine candidates do that, get the assignment and realize this isn't for me on that. One of the things we've been very fortunate, the last person we had to let go on our decision was about 3.5 years ago. It's been more than a year since someone left the company. Our average tenure is more than 9 years, and that's even with hiring a third of the company since COVID started. So we really know we need to focus on helping people grow and change. And sometimes it can be right person, wrong role. We have key leaders at the company who've had 4 different jobs within the company. Some they did well, some didn't fit as well, but they were trying. The spirit was there of it. It wasn't like they were blowing it off or disengaged. It was just finding the right fit. So we'll often try and move someone around to a different position if it's not working out for them. And sometimes that's not something they want to do, and they'll look to choose and find something on their own. But fortunately, as I was saying, our turnover rate is about 5%. So that's not bad.
That's remarkable. And I think, when we can align someone's skills, someone's talents, someone's passions with the job that requires that, it can be heaven. And I know so many people, so many leaders, unfortunately, harp on the negative, harp on what they need to fix. And if your company is big enough and you have enough scale, it can be valuable to say, well, maybe a few of our people are not lined up correctly between what the need of the role is, what their skills and passions and true talents and expertise are. And maybe we can move this person over here, that person over there. It's a bit of a chess game. And
Yeah.
the company has to have a certain size to do that. But suddenly you have more people doing the jobs they're meant to do, they're good at, and they love. That can have a big impact on an organization.
Yeah, and we typically are only talking about moving one person at a time, given, we're a 20 plus person
Yeah.
company. We don't have that scale where it would be much easier to shift people completely. The other thing being a small company, people often have multiple roles, which can
Right.
add complexity, but can add enjoyment. And
Yeah.
sometimes, hey, this part I understand it needs to be done for the company. It's okay, but this is what I love as well. And, I know we're going to get to talk later about some of the theories behind what employees and what people need to do to become leaders themselves and grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So, continuing our today's theme seems to be honesty. You before, you had talked that you had negative sales for the first 30 days of March 2020. For those who don't remember those days, that was the start of the COVID-19 lockdown, very much in the rear view mirror, thank goodness. But what got you through that?
Sure. Well, it was a combination of things. And, first off, I didn't want to have to let anyone go. And it's something that's actually built a tremendous amount of trust because I'd been transparent when times were good. So I had a trust build up when times are bad. Like, hey, if times are good, you're going to get a better bonus on that. And people understand if they're not so good, it's probably not there. So it's important to have that trust of being open in communication and transparency. It didn't take a lot for the people to be worried about what was going on because guess what? If we were doing live broadcasts or video production shoots or media tours, clients weren't necessarily promoting things that weren't happening
Right.
anymore because they'd been shut down. So, it was literally a 24/7 between myself and the general manager to try and get us the PPP. And I had announced before it hit the fan that I was cutting my salary to zero before because I saw this coming early in March. So we only ended up having one payroll where a number of people were cut to 80%. which was what was the policy at the time. And before that next payroll, we'd gotten the PPP money and were able to restore everyone to full salary and pay them back for the shortfall
Wow,
that they had had.
that's
So
amazing.
that built up a tremendous amount of trust. And, the team really came together, as you know, and viewers probably know we're one of the lead satellite media tour companies and one of the few with our own studio and control room. So literally on the Thursday the NBA shut down, the next Monday we had engineers in retrofitting our control room to be able to take in video signal from anywhere. So we could
Wow.
do these virtual media tours just as we'd continued to do. And because there was a health um, business in our building, the building wasn't shut down completely, which was a fortunate
That
break,
was helpful.
which allowed to
That
keep
is
access.
helpful.
And we also made some changes to our HVAC system to make it safer. Everyone was getting tested before they were coming in for those who had to be there. So I think that was key. And, by the end of the month, the last day, we fortunately had a good client win, but also brands realized it was more important than ever for them to be communicating to the public. And the benefit we have is we've got a team of in-house media people who are pitching broadcast media every day. And it's really a hard thing to do if you're going to be like every 2 months or 6 weeks or month, you have a story that you're pitching because you need to get to know the people and the stations were trying to navigate it. They
Yeah.
needed footage. And a trend that really took off then was interest in hearing directly from people who worked at the organization, from the business, rather than a third party expert. And that's continued through to today.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, I think our attitudes, all that, really goes back to resiliency. How resilient are you able to be and mindset? And if you want to have a mindset of this is a terrible thing that's happening, which it was, not to
Oh my
minimize it,
goodness. Yeah.
and I'm worried about my business and I'm worried about this. And this is where a good coach can shift you. Not that I ever want to experience it again, into even at the darkest of times, there's opportunity. And some firms, and I'm glad to hear yours, had a killer, well, bad word choice, but it had an amazing 2020 and 2021.
Well, I
So
would say that, but we were able to turn it around and have
yeah,
a growth period. And, compared to
well,
where we were since 2019, we've doubled in size
wow,
in terms
good
of
for
revenue
you.
since
Good for you.
2019. But I think, resilience, people will do a lot when it's a survival mode.
Mhm.
I mean, I definitely had moments of like, geez, after 34 years, is this what's going to take me out? I mean, I've outlasted Lehman Brothers. Come on,
Right.
you know? But so everyone was just focused on what do we need to do to make it work with the idea I want to keep everyone employed
Yeah.
on that. That was
Yeah.
a big part of that because people were like, oh my God, if you lost your job, where were you getting another job?
Yeah.
That and
Exactly.
given that it took me more than 13 and a half years to fire my first person, that wasn't exactly the way I wanted to be.
Exactly. Good for you. So, like me, you believe it's never too early to start to lead. Your concept about that, is called managing management. Can you tell us a bit about what managing management means for you?
Sure. I thought of that as a book title when I was at my previous job. And the idea is that it's not a book I've ever written. I'll throw it out there. Anyone wants to write it, it's good. But the whole idea is that you have more control over what your career is going to be at an organization if you're thinking not passively, okay, what do they want me to do next? Twiddle thumbs, got that, great, I'll do it. Oh, boss, what's next? What's next? But can you control people? And this also applies not just to work life, but to life. Persuasive communications. Can you get people doing what you want to do and assuming it's for the good of everyone involved? It's not like, hey, let's go rob a bank
Yeah.
together kind of thing. So if you're thinking that way, it forces you to think of, oh, what will the person who's giving me directives, what will be most helpful for them? What can I do to excel? What can I be aware of that's a need that they might not even realize is a need that I can offer help? So suddenly I'm starting to control the agenda of my workday and my work life and being a leader from the start.
Yeah, I think leading oneself is so important. Um, and you can't lead others, you can't influence others till you're leading yourself in sort of a proactive way. And we
Right.
can, we can say the world happens to us, my company happens to us, my boss happens, or you can say, I happen to the world, I happen to my boss, I happen to the agency or the organization.
Yeah.
That mindset shift can really be huge.
Yeah.
So
I,
along
I
these,
happen, and Ken, if I can just jump in
yeah, of
on that,
course.
because I happen, one thing that's very fortunate the way I'm wired, I happen to overwhelmingly believe I control more things than I actually do. And I think having that mindset forces you to think, and I'll constantly look like, okay, that wasn't the outcome I wanted. What should I have done differently? And for people out there, not from a point of fault, what's wrong with me, I'm horrible. It's more about learning. We even
Mhm.
mentioned in our hiring process, I always tell people I'm interviewing, I believe dumb questions prevent dumb actions. So don't not ask a question because you think everyone will be stupid. Because hey, you got to learn it once. Clearly, we don't want you asking the same question 27 times. That just gets exhausting. But if you're thinking about it, the likelihood is others are as well, or it's a challenge that others have had to learn to overcome. So be able to be comfortable to be out there and have enough confidence that your intentions are good, but this is something you're not sure of.
So let me add two points that makes me think about. One is, at a certain point, I think we accept we can't control things and it's going to be just fine, right?
Mm,
Everything is going to work out if I own my confidence, I own my courage, and I know it's all going to be fine. It may not seem it in this moment, but I'm confident it will. So it's almost like you control a little less. You I think actually get more when you're just saying, I know it's going to be fine. The other thing that I would add, and of course, this is, I see everything through the prism of coaching. I can't help it. It's what I do. It's, well, as we say, coaching isn't what I do, it's who I am. That's happened for me.
right.
But the notion of not even saying, here's what I did wrong, because there could be some judgment in that and we could feel bad, but to say, I did what I did. What am I going to do even better next time? What's the vision for the next
Yeah.
iteration? And that can tend to allow us to get there more quickly.
Well, I have a great example of that from early in my career. I'd been working for a year to try and get a client over, and randomly they had some potential interest in something. And I ended up speaking to someone who I'd known who was, doing freelance, and mention this, and the company heard about it and were like, okay, we're not going to work with you because I'd mentioned it wasn't anything highly sensitive
Yeah,
of that,
yeah,
but it was like a lesson, like, as, oh, I know, what's your take? And they didn't want that. This is
yeah,
what I was
yeah.
thinking of that. So it's like, well, that was stupid. Okay. But guess what? I'm not going to do it again. I'm not a bad person, but like,
Right, right,
if I keep doing
right.
that, and so I stopped doing that. I think that's
Well,
really important. I do have a question though, because I'm a little
you're asking me a
skeptic.
question. Oh, this
I
is
am.
interesting. Uh-oh,
A
turning the tables.
I'm a little skeptical on your la di da, things are going to work out fine, because I'm a believer and you've got to make it happen. I mean, there's a good chance if you just float through, things might be okay. But, with the mindset that you can control more, I think that's something that creates better outcomes
Yeah.
for you. So I don't
Well,
know if it's just a
yeah.
floating through, but that might be the way I'm wired too.
Right, right. I mean, people are wired differently. I don't see it at all la-di-da. I see it as having a passionate, passionate belief. This will all work out. And although it seems to be going against me now, I have faith, confidence that I can lead myself and lead others through it. So it's not la-di-da at all.
Sure.
It's very um I own it. I embrace it. I will get us there. So,
We
give me a
align.
Yeah, we really do. It's just, and I have learned sometimes when you just let go, this happens a lot with prospecting and talking to potential clients, which I still do. If you're a coach, you're going to be in biz dev and marketing forever. Or if you're a
Right.
soloist, right? An
Any
entrepreneur,
business owner.
right?
Yeah.
You're going to be doing that. And I have learned that if my mindset is I got to bring in this client, I need to make numbers, some of that energy comes through in a way that is not magnetic or appealing to the other person. And once I believe, and I think this is especially true in coaching, where you can't force someone into being a coaching client. They've got to realize they're ready. And I have learned when I let go, they often say, okay, I'm ready. All right, last
Right.
question. Last
No, and
question.
that works with human relations too. I
Oh,
think if you're
always.
approaching it, and this is what I would start my sales sort of mindset, and I called it the idea sell. Like, oh,
Mm,
this would be a good idea for you. This is something you should definitely do. Regardless of who you work with, you should do it. By the way, we're pretty good at it, but it's something you should do regardless of whether you work with us or
yeah,
not.
I like that.
That's our
Well,
mindset.
you know what I love about that is that, and it's something I encourage people in the business to do, is help them understand what it's like to experience having you on their side. And so your willingness to give ideas and to say, here's what I would do if I were you, whether with me or someone else, you're showing that you're looking out for them. That's a magnetic thing. That the difference between here's what I do, here's what I'd recommend, up to you, I find is much more appealing than once you hire us, I'll share my wisdom with you,
Yeah,
right?
and we've
So
told
do
clients
it.
not to do projects. I had a client
Yeah.
approach me with one that we could have gotten good bookings for, but they wanted someone to spend $1,000 who saw it to fly to a conference because this singer, not Taylor Swift, was going to be making an appearance about a related business of that. And I was like, oh, great. You want to get exposure, awareness for that? We'll definitely get that. And they're like, well, no, we actually want to turn attendance. I'm like, I don't think someone seeing something on a morning show is going to be like, I've got to fly to Denver for this
Yeah.
conference next week.
Yeah.
That's going to
Yeah.
cost me $1,000. Like, if
Yeah.
that's your goal, don't do it because you're going to be
Yeah.
disappointed.
You
It's
know,
critical.
giving your very best counsel is its own reward. It will always work. Even if they hire someone else first, but they will come back and they will remember this person gave me really good counsel. That's always
Right.
the right thing. All right, last question. You've been part of this industry for nearly 40 years. Who, one or two up to you, the industry executives who you admire as truly effective, engaging, and why?
Sure. It's funny because that question made me think back a bit that maybe my business would be a lot bigger if I did focus on who are these great leaders? What are they doing? I've got
Mhm.
to do more of that. We could be more successful. But I haven't really done that. But there are
Mhm.
definitely people I admire, and some of them have had senior positions, some have had junior positions, some I've gotten to meet through my show. Like I'm sure you love engaging with different people
Oh, yeah.
and you do it
Yeah.
so well on
Thank you.
your show. But there's someone, Monique Kelly. She was a senior pharmaceutical executive, did great, decided that's not what she wanted to do. And she's really helping to mentor people. She's an associate professor at Boston University, involved with the group
Nice.
chief, helping women. And she's just such a giving, wonderful spirit every time I've had her on the show, or even just when I talk to her, I always tell her, you know, I feel better about the world every time I speak with you. It's just a wonderful
What a
thing
gift
to
she
bring.
gave you.
Exactly. Grace Leong is someone I admire. She's
Oh,
just so gracious and giving and such an inspiring leader and mentor. Damon Jones from Procter and Gamble. I had a chance to work with him even before I was at my own company when we were junior level
oh my
people on a
goodness.
project, and just he's another decency, giving, thoughtful,
Mm.
caring. I had a recent moment. I'd never met Corey DeBrow of Burson, and I was at an event, and there were some aspiring students there as well. And I was talking to one of them, and they're giving me advice. I can learn from them. They can learn from
Beautiful.
me. And
Beautiful.
one of them said, "Oh, I was really hoping to meet Corey at this." I was like, "Oh," and I'd never met him at the point. Of course, I knew the name. I said, I'll come on over. I'll introduce you. And I said, "Hi, Corey. I was Doug Simon. I was speaking to this student. She mentioned that she'd wanted to meet." He could not have been more gracious
Mm.
and wonderful. And those are the types of things that I really bond to. And I find that's more important. Not to say like, geez, maybe it wouldn't be a bad thing if we were a $200 million company. It probably wouldn't be, but
Hmm.
that's not the way I really focus on that. It's more
No,
about, how do we bring people up? How do we create opportunity for people? How do we have fun?
yeah,
That's
fun is
critical.
so important. So it's interesting you mentioned Grace, who's been a guest. It's interesting you mentioned Corey, who will be our guest next month in December of this year. So I thank you for that. But he is
Great. And I'll
gracious and lovely, and I'm so glad you had that experience. And I bet that experience will stay with that student forever. And that's the thing we remember as leadership. As leaders, it's not just I grew the agency, I doubled the budget, it's that impact you have on people which lasts forever. So what a great story. I
Yeah,
thank you for
and
sharing
just so
that.
you know, for giving you the chance to do that promo, I'll be providing you my bank wire information after we finish the recording.
Well, I don't know if you charge me if you promote someone on my show for my show. I don't know if there's a fee with that. We'll have to figure that
That's a
out.
good
Anyway,
philosophy. That could be a show.
that could be a show. That could be a show. Anyway, a show about nothing. As
Well, I think your show is about a lot more than nothing because it's so
okay.
important. And, even today, if the two of us together can reach, especially people who are newer, whether they're in the industry or not, to realize that they've got to start seizing leadership from the get go. And that's going to get them more advanced, further along. And one last little anecdote at my last
Of
job,
course.
one of my colleagues said to me, like, "Doug, you shouldn't joke around as much as you do." And I sort of thought about it, and I appreciated the person. Clearly the spirit was to help me out, but I'm
Yes.
like,
Good thinking.
what's the point if I'm not going to be myself? So I
Oh,
want
I'm
people, you
sure.
don't have your work persona and your offline persona. Not to say you might behave differently at a fraternity reunion if that was where you went than you would in the office, but you still fundamentally have to be that same person. And you want to work in a place, again, if we're not the people who are scrambling with 3 jobs to feed their family, that embraces letting you be yourself, but be your best self and bring your best self to the table. I tell people when I hire them, if you have an idea and you keep it to yourself and don't say you're cheating the company, but you're cheating yourself. So you've
Well,
really got to engage from the get go.
I think the notion of bringing your full self, your authentic self, etc., that wasn't the case when we joined the business, when we started our careers. And I think it's a great shift that people can bring more of themselves and laugh and enjoy. So we have laughed. I've enjoyed this tremendously. If people want to reach you, Doug Simon, what's the best way?
Sure. They can shoot me an email at Doug S as in Simon, Doug S at dssimonmedia.com, the company name. Hit me on my cell, 917-952-7007.
Wow.
I feel a little James Bondy with that, so they
Yeah.
can shoot me a text, but I'm very accessible and I love meeting and talking to new people just about life, about business. And of course, if there's an opportunity to work together, that can be icing on the cake.
Absolutely. Doug, thank you so much. It has been a great joy to have you on our little podcast. For anyone else out there, um, if you want to reach me, talk about leadership, talk about coaching, talk about careers, all the things that we talk about, you know how to do that. KEN at JACOBSCOMM.com. Or if you prefer LinkedIn, yes, there are many Ken Jacobs on LinkedIn, but I think I'm the only one with initials. So it's Ken Jacobs, comma, PCP, and then you can find me. And as we always say, as we wrap up, Till next time, keep on taking the lead.